Can you say some words? How do you create this collective thinking process in practice?
Yes.
You have many experience with different experiences with these methods. How do we do it?
Well, it was an idea for 15 years or something, and the people who picked up on the idea most are the Austrians,
Okay.
especially in Vorarlberg and now in Vienna and in other places of Austria. And that's a question for me, is why the Austrians? I don't know.
We were already joking. Normally we have the image of ourselves to be behind.
Right. Well,
that's the first thing we are ahead of.
Yeah, you're ahead. You're ahead. So, okay, this was an idea that, and the idea is basically that we can randomly select, say, just a small group of citizens, 12 citizens from a city or a state or a region or a nation or a world. Just randomly select 12 citizens and facilitate them to basically to think about what they want and what about an issue, or mostly to choose the issue, and then to speak with a unanimous voice. And so I did develop a way to facilitate that conversation that I call dynamic facilitation. And when people are facilitated, those 12 are facilitated to think about together and come up with a unanimous statement about what they want. It turns out that when they present this view to the rest of us, most of us say, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't we do it? And so it's a way to stimulate a conversation of all of us, because then when those people go away and in 4 months you randomly select a new group, essentially what's happening is that all of us are in one conversation, and over time there's an articulation of what we're coming up with so that we can choose to be smart in what we do.
Can you give us an example what happens when you facilitate a wisdom council?
Yes, my favorite example is what happened in Bregenz, Austria, where they had a development project in the heart of town, which was a parking lot for a really long time because nobody could do the battle it took to get a development project underway. And Manfred Hellriegel, who runs a department in Vorarlberg called the Office of Future-Related Issues, suggested to the mayor that he try a wisdom council. And they randomly selected, I think, 12 citizens. And those 12 citizens looked at the project, and they listened to the developers, and they listened to the environmentalists, and they listened to the different voices. And then they closed the doors, and they were dynamically facilitated to come up with a unanimous perspective. And the unanimous perspective was, hey, what we and the citizens want from this is we want to be connected to the lake. And you have a highway and a railway, and we don't feel connected to the lake. And if we could use this project to be connected to the lake, then we'd be excited about it. And in fact, we have an idea about how to do that. If you raise the ground level of the project to the second floor instead of the first floor, then the project could spill over into the lake and people could feel connected to the lake. And they presented that idea. They filed, the 12 citizens filed on stage and presented that idea to the assembled community. And the developers said, wow, we didn't think of that. And the mayor said, that's a great idea. And basically, that's now what the project is going to be. And that's what's moving ahead in Bregenz. So it's an example of, and it didn't even get that much support. I mean, the presentation wasn't, it was to the whole community, but only a few in the community came, but it still got the results. And if we start getting the community involved, where the community is paying attention and interested and in the conversation, things can only get better.
Can you tell us some things about what are you doing to facilitate this collective thinking when 12 citizens come together, they don't know each other, one professor from university or a farmer sitting together talking about big issues? So how can you facilitate that something's coming out?
Yes, well, this is actually the secret ingredient, because most of our thinking processes pretend that we don't have feelings. We try and dissociate from our feelings, and we try and think with our minds and not, especially our negative feelings. And we don't want to have an argument, so we do what we can to avoid dysfunction. And the facilitation process that I use and teach is about helping people express their feelings about this in the rage, their energy. We want their energy, except that we keep everybody safe. And we find that what happens when somebody first blurts out something that they're mad about or whatever, eventually that turns, when everybody's safe and that energy turns creative. And so if you have a thinking process that's creative, all of a sudden you have a breakthrough. So there's two ways to reach unanimity. One way is to have an idea and start getting rid of the people that disagree, or asking the people that disagree to please change their views, or try and mute your feelings, just come on board with us. That's one way. The other way is to have different viewpoints and be in a creative process and have a breakthrough. And when that happens, everybody's on the same page, we're all together, and we have a better answer than we thought was possible. And we couldn't have gotten there if we weren't all different. So it's a paradox. We become more united, but we become more different. In other words, I become more individuated, and yet our group process, we become more unified.
Now you've mentioned that we are in an existing political system.
Yes.
We are in a system of balancing powers.
Yes.
And these people, these citizens, live in this existing system. So how can you arrange that this works together? I'm not saying, well, we are afraid what's coming out of a wisdom council.
Well, in a way, we don't have to ask anybody's permission to do this. Mm-hmm. There can be a few of us that get it, that set this in motion. And in Vorarlberg, it was a few in government that set it in motion. And so it's really adding on to what already exists, a conversation. But it's a different kind of conversation. It's not the usual power struggle. It's more like what happens when there's a timeout, or when if you're playing a game and there's an accident and somebody gets hurt. All of a sudden, people stop competing and they start bringing more of themselves into the conversation, and they have more compassion, and they might even forget the score, and they're worried about if this person's hurt, or are we still having fun playing this game? Maybe we want to stop playing. Mm-hmm. That's the missing conversation in our society throughout the world. Mm-hmm. And all we're doing is adding that conversation. A few of us can set that conversation into motion. And if this wisdom council speaks with a unified voice, common sense, and the rest of us go, yes, I think so too, there's no higher authority. The UN, national governments, whatever, they're not higher. They don't have any higher authority than all of us saying, no, this is what we want. So it's a way, essentially, to just remind us all that we're participants here in a life that we want to sustain, and that we want to have human values be the bottom line instead of corporate profits or something else.
It looks for me as it's kind of, we are the 99%, because you have Occupy Wall Street in New York and all over the world and say, we are the people. What do you think? Is that is that the same way of thinking, or?
No, to me the we is all 100%, all of us, and I think that it's that all of us really are together, or would be together. It's like, to me, it's like arranging a life. We're going to have a life now, and we're going to arrange it like a basketball game. We're going to have this competition. Now, when I'm ahead in basketball, I don't feel like I should share my points with the losing team. Doesn't make sense, because it's set up to be this game. As soon as you call timeout and you bring people together in this other spirit, the spirit of trying to figure out what's best for everybody, well, now sharing is easy. Now it's, we want a life that works for everybody, and we're not happy unless that's true. And so, to me, it's about shifting our minds so that we think in this different way, where we're seeking what's best for everybody instead of in the competition, which is what our system currently structures.
But so I'm kind of advocatus diaboli, you know, that's the advocacy for the devil now.
Oh, okay.
And saying, well, competition is quite sexy for the winners.
Yes. Well,
so why should as a winner I should lose my power and say I share my earnings and so on?
It's not in the game. They shouldn't. But the game is not life. We've confused. We think real life is this game. It's not. There's a bigger, better life outside of the game. That where we're just people and we're trying to. I mean, it is nuts to keep playing a game that's terminal, that can't work, and I think we're beginning to realize. Some of us are beginning to realize that it cannot work. That economic growth is marvelous, except that the more economic growth we have, the more we trash the planet, or more we undermine the values of being with family and community. That doesn't make sense. There should be economic growth. There should be all these human values need to be weighed and thought through, and we can design our institutions in ways that support those values coming together.
So if you would say, what are the chances of doing this kind of participation process? And then I will ask the risks.
100%. I think it's inevitable. It's just a matter of when we wake up. We're on a path that can't work. So what is another path? Well, obviously we have to wake up. One way to wake up is to wait till the crisis gets so bad that we all come to what I call choice creating through the crisis. The other way is to come to choice creating through some process of thinking, like the Wisdom Council, and a collective thinking process where each of us are different, and our differences add to what we all can do together.
Can you say some words? What is the new about this way of participation? Because there are different methods of participation, and what's the difference now?
Well, the core is the process of thinking, and I call it choice creating. There are lots of deliberative and deliberative democracy and deliberation kind of thinking processes and dialogic processes. And there's negotiation processes, and there's just voting processes, values, and hearings. And what we want is the ideal thinking process is where we kind of step out of what we're doing and we honor one another and we listen to one another and we're creative together and we seek what's best for everybody. That is a particular kind of conversation that I have given a name to. I call it choice creating. It's not dialogue. And the key is that we need to be careful about assuring the safety and the facilitate people to engage one another at that level. Choice creating. That's the difference.
So can you say the difference that you say choice creating and the other pole is making decisions?
Yes.
Normally we are poled and directed to making decisions.
Yes.
So what's the difference between making decisions and choice creating?
Well, when I make a decision, there's a me and there's this decision. There's a separation in me, and I've separated out my feelings. I'm trying to act cognitively, and I'm using judgment. And the word decision is to separate out, to cut away. So it's a process it's an intellectual process, and I'm trying to stay in that place of making the decision. And then, but when I'm done with making the decision, I have to add back my commitment because I've lost all that energy. So I have to commit to the decision and somehow pump my energy back into it. But the choice creating is where we're working with the energy of people, the feelings of, and the a choice is like tasting. It's like a visceral thing. The root of the word choice is to taste, and we're creating the choice. It's not making it. It's a talking conversation where a choice emerges, and we know what to do, and we have energy for doing it, and we don't have to add commitment.
So the energy of the process are the emotions.
Yes.
And you work with the emotions during the choice creating process.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes. Which is hard for people sometimes because we've been taught to hold back our emotions and be in this logical mode. And the people who are really good at it are high in the hierarchy. But we're asking people to just blurt out what they think, and yet we keep them safe, and yet we help them. We help the group process all of that to become a positive. And then the blurting out becomes less blurting out and becomes more, people become more comfortable and more relaxed in that.
So to sum up, the process is collecting or to randomly select 12 people that meet for one day or
a day and a half or so, yeah.
And then they present their unanimous ideas to a greater collective group?
Yes, they are a symbol of all the people. Mm-hmm. And they've spoken in this tone of choice creating, and they present their unanimous perspective. And the people in the audience generally go, yeah, they generally resonate in some way. They have different views, but they generally say, I support this, and I'd like to add this piece, or I have this concern, or...
So the experience is they got the point.
They get the point, and they're behind the point.
Mm-hmm. And then after 4 to 6 months, the new people get together, or what's
ideally, you'd have a random selection periodically, every 4 months or so. And ideally, the group would choose a topic. Mm-hmm. And ideally, everyone in the community would pay attention and be a part of the conversation that gets stimulated. And if that can happen, then there's a voice of we the people that's wise and responsible that can provide direction to government and to the markets and to all of us, that we can all know what we want and and have some common sense to what we're doing in society.
Normally, every medicine has risks. What's the risk of the medicine, dynamic facilitation, and wisdom council?
Collectively, I can't find it. We have a random selection, they give a speech, they go away. Where's the risk? Individually, there's huge risk because we're now transforming how we talk and think. If I'm a lawyer, for instance, I make my living out of the conflict. And if we're not going to have that conflict anymore, how does this work? If I'm in the hospital setting, you know, we have all these structures about, well, you don't, you're different. Okay. In the U.S., it's a competitive marketplace.
It's getting here too.
It's getting here too, yeah. So, but yeah, it's craziness to have a competitive marketplace. But there's, how do we, in healing, people want, they're in the profession because they want to serve. They want to serve life. Our high school, our kids growing up, they want to serve life. All of us want to serve. And we want to be rewarded for it. And our system says, no, we can't just have people serving life. You have to filter your desire to serve through this group that wants to be self-interested, this profit-making group. So we can't just have you serving life. So it's a matter of coming to the we and changing our institutions and our structures, how we structure things. So there is risk of me changing. Me as an individual, I resist because it feels like an earthquake. But there's really no risk. But but it feels like it because I'm basing my life on these systems.